So, good evening, everybody. As I said, this is our 11th class out of 12 for part one. I don't know about you, but I'm getting a little tired. So, I'm looking forward to a bit of a break after next week. Anyway, so tonight, I thought I'd share some of the writings of Sheikh Ahmad al-Aqsa'i concerning the imaginal realm. As you may recall, Sheikh Ahmad was the founder of a new school of thought within the Shi'i branch of Islam. He laid the foundations for a new approach to Shi'i theology that eventually caused traditional Shi'i theologians to denounce him as an innovator. After his death, his efforts were continued by his foremost student, Sayyid Kazim ar-Rashdi, who defended his teacher's approach and elaborated his thoughts in numerous works. Together, they created what we now know as the Shaykhi school. From a Baha'i perspective, Ahmad and Rashdi are understood as having intellectually prepared the people of Iran, Iraq, and the surrounding areas for the imminent arrival of the return of the long-awaited Mahdi or Qa'im. When the Bab, the founder of the Babi religious movement, claimed to be the expected one in 1844, which is 18 years after Sheikh Ahmad's death, many Shaykhis accepted his claim. To those who doubted the legitimacy of the Shaykhi school, the Bab and Baha'u'llah both verified the divine nature of their mission. For his part, the Bab described them as gates to his own gatehood. So let me call up the readings and we'll just start up. So I'm hoping that Milton will be the first in line to volunteer as usual. Thank you so much, Milton.
Oh, I enjoy reading. Okay.
Excellent.
Formerly I sent forth unto you Ahmad, and more recently Qa'im. But apart from the pure in heart amongst you, no one followed them. What hath befallen you, O people of the book? Will you not fear the one true God, he who is your Lord, the Ancient of Days? O ye who profess belief in God, I adjure you by him who is the eternal truth. Have you discerned among the precepts of these gates anything inconsistent with the commandments of God as set forth in this book? Hath your learning deluded you by reason of your impiety? Take heed then, for verily your God, the Lord of eternal truth, is with you, and in very truth is watchful over you. The Bab.
Okay, thank you. We're going to need some more volunteers, so feel free to jump into the queue. So some years later, Baha'u'llah referred to them as the twin resplendent lights, signs of the invisible heaven and perfect men. Okay, Thomas, and thank you for reading that prayer for us to begin with. Let's take it away with number 2 here.
And now, concerning this wondrous and most exalted cause, know thou verily that many an astronomer hath announced the appearance of its star in the visible heaven. Likewise, there appeared on earth Ahmad and Qa'im, those twin resplendent lights. May God sanctify their resting place. From all that we have stated, it hath become clear and manifest that before the revelation of each of the mirrors reflecting the divine essence, the signs heralding their advent must needs be revealed in the visible heaven as well as in the invisible, wherein is the seat of the sun of knowledge, of the moon of wisdom, and of the stars of understanding and utterance. The sign of the invisible heaven must needs be revealed in the person of that perfect man who, before each manifestation appeareth, educateth and prepareth the souls of men for the advent of the divine luminary, the light of unity of God amongst men.
Okay, thank you. So tonight we can only explore a few of the teachings of Shaykh Ahmad ibn Zainuddin al-Aqsahi. He was alive from 1753 to 1826. He was born in May 1753 in a small village called Mutayrifi in the region of Aqsa. For centuries, the Aqsa area belonged to Bahrain. 6 years after his death, though, in 1932, it became part of the eastern province of Saudi Arabia, which is why I was never able to find this place in all the years I looked, because I was always looking at Bahrain right here. But actually, Aqsa is a region right here. So he was born in current Saudi Arabia. So this was a bit of a moment for me when I finally realized that's what was going on. Shaykh Ahmad was raised in a Shi'i family. Sorry, let me just switch over. While the majority of his countrymen were Sunni. Apparently, there were also Sufi orders in the area. Thus, from childhood, Shaykh Ahmad became familiar with different trends of thought within Islam, a familiarity that played an important role in his later career. In his autobiography, Shaykh Ahmad complained that his people knew nothing about their religious obligations or duties. They could hardly tell the difference between lawful and forbidden acts. This irreligiosity may have been a factor in his later call for a revitalization of religious life in his society. Shaykh Ahmad apparently possessed a prodigious memory, reaching back into his early childhood. So, for instance, he is reported to have remembered a heavy rain in his hometown when he was only 2 years old. It is said that he could read the Quran by the age of 5. He also began studying Arabic grammar as a young boy. One of his teachers subscribed to the doctrines of Ibn Arabi, which seems to be his first intellectual acquaintance with the great Shaykh's theosophical thought, a subject which was to become one of the main themes of his mature writings. At the age of 20, already learned in the religious sciences, he went on pilgrimage to the Shiite sanctuaries in Iraq known as the Atabat. So if I could, I would just bring your attention to that area of Iraq. There are 4 cities there. The Arabic word Atabat means thresholds, or more fully, the lofty or sacred thresholds. The thresholds are the 4 Shiite shrine cities of Iraq: Najaf, Karbala, Kazimain, and Samarra. Together they contain the tombs of 6 of the imams, as well as secondary sites of pilgrimage. The prestige of the Atabat as a center of higher Shi'i learning, as well as the absence of any scholars in his native land, led him to this decision. His stay in the Atabat only lasted 1 year, but was very fruitful for him. He soon obtained licenses to teach the religious sciences from 7 leading scholars. His writings from this time, and especially later, demonstrate his uncommon ability to comprehend even the most difficult theological and philosophical problems. Although Shaykh Ahmad received his education from the most learned men of his age, he was never fully satisfied with his formal education. This led him to piety and meditation. As a result of his lengthy meditations and recitation of the Quran, He began to have recurrent dreams of the Imams. His dreams became one of the primary sources of his knowledge and inspiration. His perceptions of the Imams in dreams became the cornerstone of his life, influencing his personality and creating in him an intense love for these 12 supporters of the Prophet. Okay, Jennifer, if you wouldn't mind, this is reading number 3.
Recalling his childhood, he states that early in his life, the gate of dreams was opened to him by Imam Hassan B. Ali, the second Imam. In his first dream, an extraordinary experience for him, he presented several questions to the Imam and received answers. It was in this first dream that the Imam put his mouth on Shaykh Ahmad's mouth and that Shaykh Ahmad drank the Imam's saliva. Shaykh Ahmad also related that he dreamed of the Prophet Muhammad and drank of his saliva as well. Vahid Rafati.
So I should have mentioned this before. It's come up a few times. When there's a B with a dot in a name, that's a short version of Ibn, son of. So you could just say Ibn in the future. Okay. Experiences like these encouraged him to devote more and more time to meditation, prayer, and recitation of the Quran. Soon it was possible for him to meet any imam he wished in order to present questions to him concerning the difficulties he encountered as he endeavored to understand the truth. Okay, Alan and good old Nanaimo. Let's see. This is a short one this time.
The symbolic interpretations of these dreams and his preoccupation with life hereafter provided a ground for the young man to posit the existence of an intermediary world beyond terrestrial life and to lay the basis for future visionary experiences.
So a typhoid epidemic in 1772 caused him to return to his native land. Very little is known of his life for the next 25 years. It is likely, though, that he devoted most of his time to studying, meditating, and writing. So in 1797, at the age of 46, an attack on Al-Aqsa by the fundamentalist Wahhabis forced him to emigrate to Basra. He remained in Iran and the Atabat from that time until the end of his life. This was the period of his fame, popularity, and close association with the officials and religious leaders of these two areas. Following numerous journeys within Iran and Iraq, he died on the road to Medina in 1825 at the age of 75. He was buried in that city's Baqi cemetery. Shaykh Ahmad's learning and piety brought him fame, respect, popularity, and influence. He was welcomed by governors, officials, religious leaders, and the masses wherever he traveled. Okay, Lisa, let's switch down to number 5 here.
In Yazdi, he received letters of invitation from Fath Ali Shah, who had expressed his wish to visit with him personally. Shaykh Ahmad responded positively and went to Tehran, where he was warmly received by the Shah and his court. He was invited to make his residence in Tehran, but Shaykh Ahmad found the invitation incompatible with the piety and simplicity of his life and soon left the capital.
Okay, thank you. So toward the end of his life, Shaykh Ahmad's widespread popularity and fame, as well as his controversial doctrines, which some of the religious leaders considered to be heresy, brought him the bitter experience of being denounced as a heretic, a takfir. This occurred in the city of Qazvin in 1824. There he met with a group of the city's clergy, led by Haji Mulataki Barakani, the uncle of the famous Babi poetess Tahare. He raised a number of theological issues and asked Shaykh Ahmad to explain his views. Finding that his answers did not accord with the universally accepted beliefs of the Shia, he declared him a heretic. This was the first and most important opposition Shaykh Ahmad personally encountered. This ruling led to serious intellectual, even physical conflicts during the last year of his life. Such persecution became much worse during his successor Sayyid Qasim's lifetime. These clashes resulted in a distinction being made between the followers of the Shaykhi school and the rest of the Shi'i community. The Shaykhis never considered themselves to be innovators. Rather, they believed they were true Shia, who thought and behaved in accordance with the Shia Imams. Shaykh Ahmad acknowledged his opposition to the views of the leading philosophers and theologians of his own day and in previous history. But he maintained that his doctrinal positions were rooted in and fundamentally agreed with the traditions derived from the authority of the Imams. Okay, Linda, I'm going to ask you to read the next two, 6 and 7. And the text in red is from the Quran.
Mark, there's just been a message from Michael in Arkansas,
Oh, yeah.
and they have a major tornado headed towards them 10 miles away.
My goodness.
He said, sorry, folks, going into shelter, say some prayers for us.
Oh, my goodness. That's a terrible outbreak. They're saying they may have 4 to 5 months worth of rain overnight there. Okay. Well, good luck. My goodness. Okay, so are you reading as well?
Okay, I will read. Reading number 6.
Yes.
The Imams are the Araf, intermediaries through whom God can be understood, i.e., the understanding of God is only possible through the guidance of the people of truth. Al-Haq, i.e., the Imams.
Mm-hmm. And then just right into number 7 as well.
7. A Quranic verse reads, a good tree whose root is firm and whose branches are high. Shaykh Ahmad says that when Imam Bakir, the 5th Imam, was asked about the meaning of the above verse, he replied on the authority of the Prophet. I, the Prophet, am its root, and Ali is its branch, and the Imams are its twigs. Our knowledge is its fruit, and our people are its leaves. Shaykh Ahmad.
Well, you can see why it's important to have interpreters. How would you know that otherwise? Okay, thank you. Shaykh Ahmad stated that it was impossible to name a tradition that was contrary to his own teachings. He went on to say that the majority of the Islamic philosophers and theologians did not understand the true meaning of the sayings of the Imams, so they interpreted them in a way opposed to the Imam's intent. No wonder he was regarded as a heretic. The Shaykhis were also known as Kashfiya. Sayyid Qasim explains that they were given this name because God lifted, which is kash, lifted the veil of knowledge or ignorance, from their intellect and vision, and the darkness of doubt and uncertainty from their minds and hearts. They are thus the ones whose hearts God illumined with the light of guidance. Okay, so because our time is limited this evening, we're going to focus on Shaykh Ahmad's detailed explanations of Islam's views on the imaginal realm. These fall under 3 headings. So I sent this out to you the other day. The world of Hurqalya and its 2 cities, the day of judgment, and the 4 bodies of human beings. So let's go to Hurqalya first. So as we've seen throughout this course, Muslims believe that there exists an intermediary world between the physical world and the spiritual world. Shaykh Ahmad borrows a Syriac term, Hurqalya, from the Mandeans of Basra to signify this intermediary world of archetypal images. In fact, he wasn't the first one to do so. Suharwardi was the one who's generally considered to be the first to use it. The Syriac term means the next world, which they located in the eighth climate, in other words, beyond the fixed stars. According to Corbin, his concept of Hurqalya corresponds to the world of doubles or celestial images in Mandean cosmology. That's a whole subject that we could spend time on, but we're not going to. So first of all, the Shaykh provides us with a new name for the imaginal realm. Now, it's interesting to me that the noted Baha'i scholar Stephen Lambden calls his fabulously rich website Hurqalya Publications. Okay, secondly, Shaykh Ahmad positions it in a different location than other earlier thinkers. Instead of the imaginal realm being another name for the world of Malakut, he asserts that it actually resides between Malakut and our physical world. So it's like a gateway, or a bridge, or a barzak, as they call it, an isthmus between our world and Malakut. This is unique to him. Nobody had said that before, that I'm aware of. It's the transition zone between the two. So why does he say this? Because the imaginal realm is composed of matter, admittedly a much more subtle form of matter than planet Earth, but still it's matter. Malakut, on the other hand, contains no matter whatsoever. Okay, Elizabeth, how about number 8, please? Oh,
Sorry about that. As far as the word Hurqalya, its meaning relates to an other world. What this world designates is the world of the barzak, or the interworld. In fact, there is the lower or terrestrial world. This is the world of material bodies made up of elements, the world visible to the senses. Then there is the world of souls, which is the world of Malakut, the world of the barzak, which is the world intermediate between the visible material world, Alam al-Mulk, and the world of the Malakut. Is another universe. It is a material world that is other. Put it differently, the world of bodies composed of elements, constitutes what we call the visible material world. The world of Hurqalya is a material world, the world of matter in a subtle state, which is other. Shaykh Ahmad, okay, translated by Henry Corbin, spiritual body and celestial earth.
Thank you. So, according to Shaykh Ahmad, everything in the physical world has its counterpart in the world of Hurqalya. Thus, every individual human being has two bodies, one of which exists in three-dimensional in the physical world, and one in Hurqalya. So there's another one of you existing in Hurqalya. For Shaykh Ahmad, Muhammad's night journey and ascension took place with his subtle imaginal body rather than his physical body, as the majority of Shiites and Sunnis believe. In addition, the occulted but living 12th Imam, as well as the cities of Jabulqa and Jabulsa, where he is reported to live, all exist in the realm of Hurqalya. Okay, Marie, let's see how you do on these words here.
When we speak of Jabulqa and Jabarsa, we mean the lower regions of this intermediate world. Jabulqa is the city of the east, that is, in the direction of the beginning. Jabarsa is the city of the west, that is, in the direction of the return and ending.
Okay, thank you. In other words, it's only in this visionary world of meditation that the existence of the Imam and his eternal presence can be experienced. Most importantly, it is from this intermediate world that the Imam will reappear. The placement of the Imam in this subtle visionary state where he can be spiritually encountered rescues him from the obscure and inaccessible realm of the invisible, and at the same time subjects his existence in the world of Hurqalya to limitations of time and space. Okay, who's our next reader? I have no volunteers at this point.
I'll read.
Okay, Durham, please go ahead.
The tangle of confused Shia traditions and the orthodox eschatological literature produced on the subject of occultation had served to undermine the possibility of any tangible existence of the Imam, relegating him to the timeless oblivion of a never-coming future. The mainstream Shia theology, discouraging a flesh and blood image of the Imam, replaced his authority with the general deputyship of the Mujtahids, a Ahsa'i state of visionary existence. On the other hand, paved the way not only for contact with the Imam, but for his eventual reappearance into the world of elemental existence, by making it incumbent upon him to undertake an active responsibility towards the community. Abbas Amanat.
So this is a very important turning point in the history of the Baha'i faith, because up until this point, everybody was looking for the return of this invisible Imam, but he had been so etherealized that it seemed impossible for him to ever return. So Shaykh Ahmad was pivotal in changing people's perception about this character and where he was residing. Shaykh Ahmad's view that the Imam existed in Hurqalya meant that it is still possible to have an encounter with him in visions and holy dreams. So long as the Imam remains in occultation, he may be contacted through intuitive imagination, which is gained by acquiring a transcendental consciousness here in physical reality. With these clues, Shaykh Ahmad begins to sketch out the geography of this intermediary world for us. Okay, Nina, thank you for volunteering. Number 11, please.
The term Hurqalya is used to designate the heavens of this intermediate world, together with all heavenly bodies they contain. When we speak of Jabalka and Jabarsa, we mean the lower regions of the intermediate world. Jabalka is a city to the east that is in the direction of the beginning. Jabarsa is a city to the west that is in the direction of the return and the ending. In the eastern part of this universe, there is the earthly hell. There is the earthly hell. In its western part, there is the earthly paradise, Adam's paradise. There it is that the spirits of the faithful believers take refuge. And these are the two gardens covered with greenery alluded to in the Quran.
Great, thank you. So he's actually pretty understandable, eh? He reads very lucidly, I found. He explains things as he goes along, which is wonderful. I can't wait for there to be more translations of his work. That's one of the problems when you're dealing with Shaykhism, that there's very, very little in any kind of European language. Okay, so
Mark,
yes.
Joey's raised hand function isn't operable right now, so I just wanted to let you know she raised her hand.
Okay, so I'm going to ask her to read number 12 in a second then. Wonderful. So before we go any further, let's see what the Baha'i writings have to say about the reality of these two imaginal cities. Baha'u'llah grants that they exist, but interprets them in a much more symbolical fashion than does Shaykh Ahmad. And Joey will read number 12 for us.
Know then that inasmuch as all prophets are but one and the same soul, spirit, name, and attribute, thou must likewise see them all as bearing the name Muhammad, and as being the son of Hassan, as having appeared among the Jabal, whatever, of God's power, and from the Jabsulah of his mercy. For the Jabkulah is meant none other than the treasure houses of eternity in all the highest heaven and the cities of the unseen in the supernal realm. We bear witness that Muhammad, the son of Hassan, the 12th Imam, was indeed in Jabkulah and appeared therefrom. Likewise, he whom God shall make manifest abideth in that city until such time as God will have established him on the seat of his sovereignty. We verily acknowledge this truth and bear allegiance unto each and every one of them. We have chosen here to be brief in our elucidation of the meanings of Jabal Ka, and but if thou be of them that truly believe, thou shalt indeed comprehend all the true meanings of the mysteries enshrined within these tablets.
So that raises the question in my mind, is this pre-existence for the manifestations of God? Not that I'm going to answer it tonight, but it certainly is worth considering. Okay, so let's change the topic slightly to the Day of Judgment. From his writings, it's clear that Shaykh Ahmad's main goal was to harmonize revelation and reason. In order to explain some of the doctrines of Islam that appeared contrary to reason, he relied on the concept of Hurqalya. Many of these difficult-to-explain doctrines relate to eschatology, which is that branch of theology concerned with the end of the world and God's judgment of mankind after death. The primary issues eschatology deals with are resurrection, the return to God, the meeting with God, paradise and hell, and reward and punishment. With regard to the phenomenon of human resurrection after physical death, Shaykh Ahmad believed that created beings return to their source rather than to God himself. So why is that? Well, because they were created by the primal will, not by the utterly transcendent essence of God. In addition, resurrection will take place not in the physical body, as the Shi'i doctrine maintains, but in another body, which he calls the subtle body. The subtle body consists of the elements of the imaginal realm, or Hurqalya. So this is your second body that you have operating every night you go to sleep. So the subtle body consists of the elements of the imaginal realm, or Hurqalya. We'll speak a little bit more about this in a few minutes. Similarly, heaven and hell are the results of human actions which create the experience of either heaven or hell in each person's life here in Hurqalya and also in physical life. And I see that Fred is all set to read number 13, which is a short one. So I'll ask him to read 14 after.
Sure. Proofs guaranteeing the existence of such a state after death and preceding the great resurrection are so numerous that they cannot be counted. Among the philosophers, none reject these proofs, although each one expresses himself in his own way and pursues his own line. This is from Shaykh Ahmad.
Mm-hmm.
Should I continue?
So, just hang on a sec. So before we consider Shaykh Ahmad's views on this subject any further, we need to review the outlines of Islamic eschatology as first revealed in the Quran and then expanded in the traditions, the Hadith. Okay, so Islamic eschatology holds that the day of judgment will definitely come, but God alone knows when it will occur. Its advent will be announced by the appearance of certain enigmatic signs. Okay, Fred, so please go ahead now, 14.
Yeah. The calamity. What is the calamity? And what shall apprise thee of the calamity? A day wherein mankind shall be like scattered moths, and the mountains like carded wool. As for one whose scales are heavy, he shall enjoy a life contenting. And as for one whose scales are light, an abyss shall be his mother. And what shall apprise thee of her? It is a raging fire. This study of Quran.
Okay. So the word calamity comes from the verb which means to beat or strike something so that it makes a deafening sound. This is thought to be the day of judgment, which is difficult, if not impossible, to understand. The idea of scattered moths indicates that human beings will be bewildered, running to and fro with no direction, as if they were drunk. Okay, so let's just continue on now with 15.
Question.
Sure.
How do you define the day of judgment?
That's very important. I think you're going to see that Shaykh Ahmad has a different kind of interpretation than most of the Shiites to his day, which is where they really got off the track. He was helping them to understand it in a new way, which is much more in alignment with the Babi and Baha'i faiths. So if you just hang fire, I think we'll get to it in a few minutes. Okay? Now, okay, number 15. I think Leslie is ready to read this.
When the sky is cleft asunder, and when the stars are dispersed, when the seas burst forth, and when graves are turned inside out, then shall each soul know what it has sent forth and what it has left behind. And yet, truly over you there are guardians, noble, writing, knowing what you do. Truly the pious shall be in bliss, and truly the profligate shall be in hellfire, burning therein on the day of judgment.
Okay. Hellfire, wonderful. Cleft asunder. This is considered to be one of the marks of the day of judgment. When the sky is cleaved, the stars will be blotted out and fade away. Then there's the image of the seas bursting forth. The seas swell because of a great earthquake that also causes the earth to overturn and cast out all human beings and jinn, at which point they emerge from the graves as if they were scattered locusts. Those are quotations from the Quran itself. These guardians are angels who preserve the record of all the deeds of human beings. According to Surah 50, verse 17, each individual has two angels responsible for recording the deeds that he or she performs in this life. Okay, 16. Who's going to read this one for us?
I can read that again.
Okay, thank you.
The angel who sits on the right recording good deeds is believed to be superior to the angel who sits on the left recording evil deeds.
often telling him to wait to see if an evil deed is erased through repentance or asking forgiveness.
Well, thank God he's more important than the one on the left. That's all I can say. That's an interesting little quirk that he waits until we've had time to maybe think twice. So the record the angels write is said to be the book of deeds that is given to each individual on the day of judgment. Okay, so number 17, I have no volunteers. So Linda's going to read that one. Okay.
Number 17. Then when a single blast is blown in the trumpet, and the earth and mountains are borne away and ground up in a single grinding, on that day the event shall befall. The sky shall be rent asunder, for that day shall be frail, and the angels shall be at its sides. That day, is that supposed to be 8? Oh.
Yes.
That day 8 shall carry the throne of thy Lord above them. That day you shall be exposed. No secret of yours shall be hidden. The Study Quran.
Thank you. So the single blast, this is understood by most commentators to be the first blast blown by the archangel Seraphil, or who is known as Israfil in the Quran, which will herald the end of the world. Some see this as the second blast of the trumpet, which will herald the day of judgment and resurrection. So there is a reference to the event shall befall. This is the end of the world, which leads to the day of resurrection. So further signs include the appearance of the Antichrist, who leads people away from the right path. The sun will rise from the west, the beast will appear, and Gog and Magog will come. Dense smoke will cover the earth for days, and several eclipses all proclaim the approach of the day of judgment. Sounds a lot like Revelation in a way, doesn't it? The book of Revelation. On that day, the trumpet will blast twice. At the first blast, all living things will die. At the second, the dead will be resurrected. Then they will assemble in the gathering place, in the presence of God for his judgment. God will ask them questions, weigh their deeds, and then, in accordance with their conduct, send them to hell or to paradise. One of the major events of that day will be the advent of the Mahdi, who is the guided one, who will be followed by the return of Christ. So that's just a quick portrait of what the Quran has to say about the day of judgment. Many, many images. The advent of the Mahdi, the guided one, occupies a special place in Shaykh Ahmad's works and plays a significant role in the subsequent development of the Shaykhi movement. For Shaykh Ahmad, the occultation of the 12th Imam did not mean that a physical Imam was hiding somewhere on earth, but rather that although direct physical contact with the Imam was no longer possible, the Imam lived on in the world of archetypal images, the realm of Hurqalya. And for those who strive to reach him in that world, he is still able to perform the key function of the Imam, which is initiating the seeker into the divine mysteries. Muslims maintain that the return of all to God and the physical resurrection promised on the day of judgment are the manifestation of God's grace to mankind. Belief in that day assists man to obey God and prevents him from committing sins. Whoever denies the return denies the grace of God to his people. Okay. So let's step back and see what Shaykh Ahmad had to say about all this. By referring to the world of Hurqalya, Shaykh Ahmad redefined the concept of the resurrection, contrary to the view held by the literalists. By maintaining it as the spiritual body which survives death in Hurqalya, he removed the problem of corporeal resurrection from the earthly grave. The bodily corpse perishes. The spiritual corpse, however, remains as a shapeless, luminous, and refined substance composed of elements of the world of Hurqalya. and will be resurrected and recast in a new, although identical, non-physical corpse. A common Muslim belief is that on the Day of Judgment, people will see or meet with God. This concept is found in many verses of the Quran. I've just got 3 here for somebody to read. I see Jennifer is ready to go, so I would have you read 18, 19, and 20 straight ahead. Whoops, yeah.
Lost indeed are those who deny the meeting with God till when the hour comes upon them, suddenly they say, "Alas for us that we neglected it." On the day when he shall gather them, it will be as if they tarried but an hour of the day, acquainting themselves with one another. Lost indeed are those who denied the meeting with God, and they were not rightly guided. He directs the affair, expounding the signs, so that you may be certain of the meeting with your Lord. All from the Study Quran.
Thank you. It's pretty clear. We're going to meet him. This concept of meeting with God is one of the most controversial issues in Islamic theology. On the basis of the Quranic verse which reads, "Sight comprehends him not, but he comprehends all sight." Some scholars believe that a meeting with God is impossible for human beings. They therefore take the verses that refer to meeting God allegorically, rather than literally. Others are certain that a meeting with God will occur, believing that if such a meeting were impossible, Moses would not have asked for it. Although it turned out not to be possible for Moses to meet God at that time, many believe that God will show himself on the Day of Judgment. Shaykh Ahmad, however, rejects the traditional literal interpretation of such a meeting with God on the basis of his ontological principle that the essence of God is beyond the reach of human beings. He interprets the meeting with God as seeing God with the heart. And seeing God would not be visually beholding God's essence, but rather seeing God's manifestation. As for seeing God on the Day of Judgment, Shaykh Ahmad has another interpretation. On the basis of the Islamic traditions, he interprets the Day of Judgment as the day of the advent of the expected Qa'im, the one who will arise. Literally, Qa'im means the standing Imam, that is, the one who rises and rebels against injustice, and is also the resurrector. This is radically different from the common Muslim belief. Muslims typically believe that the Day of Judgment will alter the entire universe, bringing drastic revolutions, changes, and the very phenomena of life on earth. In Shaykh Ahmad's understanding, revolutions, changes, and transformations will take place, but not in the literal way they understood. He attempted to reconcile intellect and revelation. So David Oak is going to read number 21 for us.
Here we go. The universe will not come to an end on the Day of Judgment. It has always existed and will continue to exist forever. What the Day of Judgment truly means is the day of advent of a new manifestation of God, which puts an end to the course of its previous dispensation and opens a new cycle for human beings. As the day of the advent of the expected Qa'im, the Day of Judgment will bring about changes in the social, moral, and religious life of the people. The values that have been applied for centuries will change. The principles and teachings of the previous religion will change, and a profound revelation will take place in all the various aspects of man's activities.
Okay, thank you. So that's
just one little question. There's
sure.
I don't have the number of it, but there's the Surah of the Horde, which did you
I don't know it by heart. Sorry, David.
No, it's it
Or
was
what-
just the two bugles that will blow.
Yeah.
And anyway, that's the
I
one I
should
was
have
familiar with.
I should have quoted it, I guess, but
Oh no, it's fine. You've got a lot of stuff here.
okay. But it's I'll look for that.
Sure. I think it would be quite valuable anyway.
Mm-hmm. So, as reward and punishment is expected to be meted out on the traditional day of judgment, according to Shaykhi interpretation, reward and punishment will be given to people on the day of the advent of the Qa'im. For those who succeed in recognizing him, that act of recognition itself will be their reward. And for those who fail to recognize him, that failure will be their punishment. Therefore, to recognize the expected Qa'im is to enter paradise, and to be deprived of this recognition is hell. Moreover, the bridge, the sirat, referred to in the traditions, won't be the familiar bridge between hell and paradise, but is a symbol of the Qa'im's teachings, principles, and doctrines. Shaykh Ahmad says that the bridge is the way from God to his creation, and his creation's way to him. We ought to note here that the Bab and Baha'u'llah interpreted numerous features of Islamic eschatology symbolically. The Kitab-i-Iqan is particularly helpful in this regard. And now we come to the final topic that he raised that I want to take a look at tonight.
Mark,
Four
could I-
human bodies.
Mark, could I just make a brief comment here? Very brief. It's very strange when I first came across this, but Muslims take this thing so literally, as you pointed out, that they believe the world will be completely destroyed on Judgment Day. So that's how literally they take it. And then the judgment will happen after the destruction of the world, which obviously for us means the end of the old order. And then the judgment will take place. Some will go to paradise and the others will go to hell. But it's very strange that they believe that the physical world in their literal interpretation will be completely destroyed.
That's good clarification, Jack. Thank you. So we're talking about the four bodies of human beings now, not just two. According to Shaykh Ahmad, human beings actually have four bodies. Two of these are physical, while two are subtle. He uses two different Arabic terms, both of which mean body, jasad and jism. So maybe Durham can identify some difference between these two words for us.
Jism is a living human being. Jasad is the dead body.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the difference.
Well, why didn't somebody in the dictionary say that to me? That's a pretty important distinction.
Yes, yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Shaykh Ahmad explains how a human being comes to have four bodies through an account of its descent from God into the world of physical reality. According to Ibn Arabi, all things exist, in quotes, initially in the mind of God as unmanifested essences or immutable entities. In class 9, we referred to them as eternal individualities, the forms which are known to God. The Quran refers to them as treasuries. So, Alan, I'll have you read this one, but I'm also going to get you to come back for 23 as well.
Not is there, but that its treasuries lie with us, and we do not send it down, save in a known measure.
Okay, there's a lot in that particularly short sentence that we will not cover tonight, unfortunately. But the idea about these treasuries being the name that God knows the people by, individuals by. Okay. Once God decides the time is right, he says, be, and it is. And the eternal individual moves out of non-existence into existence. This is your history, your own personal history we're talking about now. It then begins its descent from its home in the suprasensory world, called the world of mystery in Arabic, to the physical world. At this stage, it is an archetypal body, which will support the other bodies during their allotted time in this world. Shaykh Ahmad calls it a sojourn of effort and struggle, during which the eternal individual amasses something of its own in view of the future resurrection. As the archetypal body descends from step to step, passing gradually from one plane of being to another in the course of its descent, it acquires a certain mixture with the accidents corresponding to that step or plane. It's almost as if it's like an ice cream cone that's dipped in chocolate sauce, and then it's got nuts added to it, and then maybe some candies on top, right? So these are all added to that initial cone. As it passes through the imaginal realm, the astral body becomes attached to it. This is the second body. Because it is not part of the person's essential reality, the astral body is a temporary loan and will not return when the great resurrection takes place. Now, it's interesting, this same process occurred when the Prophet Muhammad asked to see the angel Gabriel. In order to be physically visible, Gabriel had no choice but to put on clothes he obtained from the imaginal realm so that he could be perceived here. Okay, Alan, that's number 23.
In the time of the prophet, when the angel Gabriel descended to this world, he took on the form and appearance of the beautiful adolescent Daya al-Kalbay. But when he went back up to heaven, this form did not accompany him on his return. And so it was each time he came down to one of the earlier prophets. He showed himself to the prophet in the form of a very beautiful human being, resembling some contemporary of that prophet. Shaykh Ahmad.
One of the little-known facts of history. Finally, the combined archetypal and astral bodies arrive in this lower world. Here they are joined by the material body, composed of elements of physical reality, and the spiritual body, which is composed of elements of Hurqalya. So we've now got 4 of them. Okay, Milton, let's, I'm going to ask you to read 2, but not write it. I'm going to interrupt you in between.
Okay. When, at the end of his descent, the human being has reached this lower world, then the elemental material body, the body of flesh, composed of the elements of our sublunary world, becomes attached to him. In relation to the reality of the human being, it is an accident. It is not a constituent of his essence. Shaykh Ahmad.
Okay. When the time comes for the eternal individual to leave the physical world, it first sheds its physical body as soon as it is placed in the tomb. And then, again, if you wouldn't mind, Milton, number 25.
Okay, I'm not sure what sublunary means.
It means under the moon.
Under the moon. I thought it might be that. Okay.
Yeah.
The material body of flesh, composed of sublunary elements, that is, the totality of accidents and stains that belong to this world below, all of that neither belonged to the man nor was with him, but was just something that adhered to him due to the fact of his existence in this world. And all of that goes back to its origin without return. Shaykh Ahmad.
Yeah. So depending on which level a particular part of that human being attached itself, it went back to that same level as the the eternal individual rises through the different levels. The spiritual body, on the other hand, survives invisibly in the tomb until the resurrection day. At that time, the archetypal body returns to it, penetrates it, and enters into its paradise or its hell with it. So this combined archetypal and spiritual body is what returns, according to Shaykh Ahmad. And that is the number 26, the last one. So who's going to read that one for us?
Mark, could you repeat that, please? I didn't understand what you said about the physical body doing what at the time of death.
Oh, okay. So it is shed as soon as somebody is placed in the tomb. Okay, it does not continue because it was loaned to it for its time on earth.
Yeah, but then following that, you read something else about the physical body.
So the spiritual body, on the other hand, survives invisibly in the tomb, so to speak, until the resurrection day. So it is somehow or other able to continue on in almost an unconscious state, if you like. And then when the archetypal body comes to return to the great resurrection, it penetrates the spiritual body, and then together they go into paradise or hell, depending on what their acts decree. So it's a combination of that archetypal body that was at the very beginning, at the very top level, and then the spiritual body, which is loaned to it in Hurqalya. That's what returns, apparently. I know this is incredibly detailed, but I wanted to give you a sense of why he said that there were 4 bodies. So let's wrap it up with Fred's reading number 26.
Thus, when post-mortem the spirit has entered the world of the barzakh, it exists there in its archetypal body, to which a body originating in this barzakh, the astral body, provisionally adheres. In fact, the latter is not a part of it, but is a temporary accident. On the resurrection day, man in his wholeness returns and leaves behind him that which was no part of him, which was not himself. By Shaykh Ahmad from
Okay. Thank you. So when you put all that together, you come up with this chart. So you have the physical body, which has 2 parts, and a subtle body, which has 2 parts. And I'm hoping that you've had a chance to look at this before. We've just reviewed most of the language here, so I'm not going to repeat it. And it's probably too esoteric to really spend much time on. But I wanted to give you an idea of what somebody who is in contact with the imams pretty much at will figured out based on the Quran and the Hadith. So I don't know enough about the Baha'i writings on this subject to be able to say, well, that's crazy, or maybe this part is good to go, but we have to get rid of that part. In the future, somebody will figure that out. But for now, I'm going to leave it right there and stop sharing.
Mark?
I hope I haven't lost my whole audience here.
Mark,
Yes.
there's a question in the chat from Jennifer.
Okay.
What are the accidents and stains of this world? Can you give some examples?
Oh, everything from the way you happen to look, the way you, the events that you've had to endure, all of those things are accidents. They aren't part of your essential self, if you like.
Your bodily imperfections.
Yep, all of that. These are all accidents, technically from a philosophical point of view. That's where they come up with that term.
And the stains? What are the stains?
Well, I don't know. I didn't go into detail, but I think you can figure out some of them are less pure than others, shall we say.
Those are your sins.
Oh, okay.
Could be. Yeah. Okay, Thomas, what's on your mind?
You're muted, Thomas.
Okay,
you
you mentioned that Sheikh Ahmad had immense popularity.
Mm-hmm.
And so I assume that some parts of these 4 sections, really appealed to the
Yep.
people.
Yep.
So it's quite interesting that even these people without hardly any education responded so fervently to the descriptions that he gave about these astral and non-physical states of being. It's a little bit surprising considering how, as a modern person, we wouldn't respond that way, I don't think.
But one of the things that really differentiates the countries like Iran from the West is that they had this concept of the imaginal realm for centuries. Everybody believed it. So when Sheikh Ahmad is referring to that world in a positive way, people have no problem accepting what he has to say. Whereas in the West, people are aghast. What the hell are you talking about? As many of you are probably thinking tonight, what is he going on about? But it is something that has real legs, if you like, in the East. And I think we're doing ourselves a disservice to not know about it. Because there may be some elements or kernels of truth in it that we could benefit from.
Comment?
Oh, sorry, Rob, I've got, unless it's directly on what I just said, I'll have you in line otherwise. Is that all right?
You're the boss.
Okay. Jamshed, what's up?
Yeah, I had a question. So like in what prayer protection, if I recall correctly, like the Bob talks about, like keeps saying earth and heaven and whatever is in between them, which is, I think I've seen in some other writing of the Bob, whenever he talks about the word, it's like a 3-word.
Yep.
I don't see that with Baha'u'llah. So I was wondering if whatever is between them, does it correspond to what Sheikh Ahmad's saying here, the intermediate word, or could be something else?
That's my suspicion. But, Durham is going to come up with the final answer on this.
See, the prayer where it speaks to في السماوات وفي الأرض ولا ما بينهما. We check this with the, it's not between them, not with it between them, which is out of both earth and heaven. This was verified with the World Center because the prayer doesn't say what is not out of them, but it says وما بينهما, like you're saying now. So it's another world. You're referring to earth and heaven and what's not between them. I just thought to mention this.
What's not between them? You're confusing me.
Yeah, what is not between them? This is very interesting meaning in this. This is in the temple of the Bab, the writings of the Bab, in the 5-star temple.
The Pentacle. Yeah.
The Pentagon. In it, one of the prayers is there also. In Arabic, this is the Allah قل الله يكفي عن كل شيء ولا يكفي عن الله ربك من شيء لا في السماوات. So nobody, no one can know God, neither in heaven nor in earth, and not anywhere not between them. But in Arabic, the prayer, unfortunately, it says between earth and heaven, which makes a big difference. What is not in between them? That's a different world.
It's
So the
like a
English,
void. It's like a void.
Okay.
Can I jump in?
Well,
Or do we have to have turn?
okay, sure. No, go ahead. If
No.
it's right on this topic, go ahead, Fred.
Yeah, it's right on this topic. I think the Ram will agree with me that a better translation in the English is all that is not in between earth and heaven, and all that is not between these two.
Yes.
So something outside of these two. There's another world which is outside of the world between earth and heavens. I think that's what the actual meaning is. Thank you.
Okay, I see Belinda's got her hand up there. I think she wants to say something about this particular topic.
I'm really curious now as to what we're supposed to do with this translation that you all have just indicated is incorrect.
yeah. The translation says whatever is between them in the prayer book.
Well, I know why they translated it that way, Jamshid, because it suggests that there are other worlds of God that lie between. Or even if you translate it in the negative, what does not lie between them, that also suggests that there are other worlds. So whether you translate it positively or negatively, it still points to the existence of other realms. But I understand why they translated also whatever lieth in between.
Yeah, but I'm now left with a lot of uncertainty about even using this prayer.
Well, no, the prayer's good, Belinda. The prayer's good.
Just, if I may say something, by the way, this is not the only prayer where there is something missing. Just keep that in mind.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, now I don't trust any of
So
the
let us
prayers.
accept it as is and carry on.
No. Well, let's face it, there are going to be future translations of all the things that we're reading today that will add subtleties and nuances that we aren't aware of right now. So I think we just go with what we understand when we read them. I wouldn't get too particularly exercised about this.
Well, see, translation always involves interpretation.
Absolutely right.
And so
saying that for years.
the translator I read this on one particular thing. You know, the translator has to know as much as he or she can about the text and insofar as translation is concerned. And if the translator does not know, then there's going to be a big problem. But I think the translation has always had that question, of interpretation. And so that is why, for example, you have many translations of the way of the Tao Te Ching, many translations, and other things as well, so that in one sense you don't really know, in another sense you know, but in terms of an idea that you know. So and I think it's very it's very difficult. There was in the Baha'i world faith, when it came to the tablet of what was it? It's by Baha'u'llah, and he
tablet of the truth seeker.
No, no, no. It has to do with the, well, you know, with the stars, you know, in heaven and so on, and sun and the moon and that kind of thing, and so on. The Kitabiyad. And if I could, I would read you the translation, but I can't. It got retranslated by the Universal House of Justice, and I say to myself, no, 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 that is not it. It's not. It's not beautiful enough. It's not, you know, lyrical enough. It's not, you know. And
Elegant.
so I ended up picking the old one, you know, which to me makes sense, but that's just me, you know. And so, I mean, this is the kind of thing that I mean, you know, that I'm
Yeah.
talking about.
Well, let's see if we can go on to a different topic than translation. I think that's not particularly fruitful at this point. Let's see what Elizabeth has to say.
Mark, I'm just wondering where to slot Rob in. I'm not sure where his question was, or when he asked the
Okay.
question.
That's true.
Well, I want to. Well, Jamshid. Well, he's asked a question. The one that's been on my mind for a thing. Well, because all throughout the Bab's writings, all that's just heaven and on earth and whatever lies between. Then he asks the question. Well, why do we read this in the Bab's writing and not in Baha'u'llah's writing? Because I, for one, from what I read from Baha'u'llah's writings, Baha'u'llah doesn't say anything about this area in between earth and heaven. I mean, that's the question that's been on my mind too. You know, and of course, I'd be nice if somebody could has an answer to that.
It would be nice, but I'm not sure we're going to get there tonight.
No, okay.
From
well,
what I've heard tonight, I think we have to agree that there are fuzzy points in the Baha'i writings based on translation issues. And I think we should leave it there, because none of us is a translator that I'm aware of. Okay, Jack, what do you got there?
Oh, well, you know what my problem is going to be, to keep it brief. But the last thing I want to say on this translation, the Italians have a beautiful saying, tradutori traditori, means the translator's a traitor.
I don't know if you could say that about Shoghi Effendi, though.
No, you can't say that. But what tradutori traditori means, they're trying to say that every translation is in some sense a betrayal.
Yeah.
That's not what I wanted to say was, you know, Shaykh Ahmad, and I've read some of his critiques. He was very severe. He was extremely denunciatory in his language. He critiqued Ibn al-Arabi, the great Shaykh of Islam. He criticized other Muslim theologians and thinkers.
Yep.
And I think he did so because of his absolute conviction that he was guided by the Prophet and the Imams in the world of dreams.
Yeah.
And so he was absolutely convinced that he received this guidance. In other words, his teachings are, I suppose, approaching infallibility or without error, although Leslie asked a very important question there when he said the spirit stays with the body, with the deceased body. That one rubbed me the wrong way. I can't understand how that would be. That would seem to be contrary to the Baha'i teachings, because Abdu'l-Baha tells us that the spirit, you know, that the bird in the cage, the cage is broken and the bird flies away. So, you know, and I also wonder if the other problem with some of what Shaykh Ahmad's saying is, we're told that the soul comes into existence at the time of conception. And yet he seems to be saying there's a kind of pre-existence here. And so it's going to be very difficult to work this out in relation to our teaching that the soul does not pre-exist the conception of the physical body. So I can see how some problems can arise with his interpretations. And he got in trouble with the Sunni clerics because a lot of this is very esoteric stuff. It's very difficult, to understand, the concept of four bodies and so on and so forth. So that's why they called him an innovator. Of course, he was right in pointing to criticizing literal interpretation of the Quran, like the end of the world, meaning it's not the physical destruction of the world, but rather of an order of things or an old way of things. And also the way he prepared his followers for the coming of the Bab and Baha'u'llah by saying that the Imam, and instead of being this ethereal, invisible, transcendent being, could appear in the world. So Shaykh Ahmad was, in that way, he was preparing the followers for the appearance of the Bab and Baha'u'llah. So,
well, Jack, my sense is that we shouldn't be putting Shaykh Ahmad on a pedestal equal to to Baha'u'llah and the Bab.
no, I'm
What
not
he was doing
that.
is he was a bridge from the mess that was Shi'ism at the time when he was born to preparing people to accept some of the thoughts of the Bab. And so he was a mixture, if you like, of both ends of that spectrum. And some of the ways that he brought things together are not going to be accepted by the Bab or Baha'u'llah. So, I mean, if you're looking for certainty, you know where to look.
Right.
But I find it fascinating to see what kind of mental calisthenics he had to go through in order to make his points based on where Shi'ism was coming from, which contorted things quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't get bent out of shape about the fact that, his views on X and Y are different than Baha'u'llah's. That's fine.
I also wanted to thank you, Mark, for a wonderful presentation tonight. I mean, you did a fabulous job of summarizing very complex thought. So thank you very much for that. Indeed, I think it was a very, very good presentation. So no, yeah, maybe but his point of view was that because he was being guided by the Prophet or the Imams in his visions and dreams, he was convinced that what he was saying was absolutely correct.
Oh, of
and
course he
that's
was.
why he denounced so strongly people like Ibn al-Arabi, who has a very high station in Islam.
Yeah.
Like if you read some of Shaykh Ahmad's critiques, I mean, he wasn't out to make friends. He blasted people for their errors,
Okay, Jack, I've got three other people I want to get to,
Okay.
and we're already
Thank you,
over
Mark.
time.
Thank you.
Mark,
Okay, so Rob, we need to come back to you. Sorry for keeping you so long, Rob. What would you like? Can you remember what you wanted to ask?
Well, one thing that I was thinking in trying to understand this subject of in between or not in between, everything that we're accustomed to thinking in terms of the experiential world that we have, like length, width, depth, or time. And so in trying to understand these concepts, one has to step out of that referential model. And that I think is the challenge that we're facing. I was thinking that something that is not in between the worlds, it could be all pervasive. I mean, there's different ways of looking at it, but I think time and space are a big obstacle to our understanding because we have to step out of that in order to, I guess, get an opening. The other thing was that I think that Middle Eastern culture was education came from the Quran, and that was the basis. And it was, we see this contrast. Abdul Baha talks about the differences, how we have to learn from the East and they have to learn from the West. But the mystical or spiritual teachings of the East gave a different referential model from which people could draw upon, which is very different from our Western culture, which is once again going back to length, width, and depth, and time and space, and so forth. Last thing I'd like to say is that in Shaykh Ahmad, when he was in Qazvin being questioned, I believe that Tahirih was listening to those comments or those conversations.
Fascinating. I fully agree with you about the limitations that we're working with. And that's one of the main reasons I think that Shaykh Ahmad spent so much time engaging the imams in the dream world, because there you are not limited to the same degree you are in the physical world to time and space issues. They're starting to free up as you move into that realm. So that's why he would cling so passionately to the ideas that came to him from the imams in that world. Okay, Durham, and then Bill, and then I'm going to close it down.
Okay, 2 points, has nothing to do with translation.
Good.
One of them related to reading number 17 and the guardian and the shrine of the Bab. If you can show reading number 17, if it's not much, it's a verse from Quran. It speaks about who will carry the throne of your Lord on 8 or something like. If you see
8
17.
There we are.
Yeah. You see here it says, and the angels shall be at its side, that they shall carry the throne of the Lord. Now, the shrine of the Bab, if you see on top, there are 8 columns, 8 pillars, not big one. And the guardian was asked, why did you put 8? And he refers to them to this verse from Quran, which is very interesting, because it says here, the angel will carry us on 8. So that's the angels.
Beautiful. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, the second point, very quick. One of the major work of Ihsa'i is what's called the explanation of the greater tablet of visitation of one of the imams. This is a huge book that many liked it and admit that it is the best explanation of that. For those who don't know about this, Shia and Sunni, they go to shrines and read tablet of visitation, different type of visitation. So there's one which is very large. I think it's in Arabic. It's about maybe, I don't know, 1,000 pages or something. But he was also criticized, many people, and also the students of Ahsai reported back also to those criticism of Ahmed Ahsai. I just thought to mention that.
Wow, I didn't realize there was a tablet that long for visitation. Okay. So, Bill, what are you going to say from Greeley?
Well, this is probably somewhat anticlimactic, but to bring it down to earth, I was thinking about this where you were reading about the apocalyptic or the similar to Revelations kind of thing that was being discussed, and it really caught my attention when you mentioned multiple eclipses. And the reason that caught my attention is I piddle with telescopes from time to time, and I realized that the way you would have multiple eclipses over a short period of time would be if the Earth was moving outside of its orbit in almost a straight line projection. But then I don't really, I'm not really an astronomer, or even, I'm no more an astronomer than I am a
theologian
or anything, right? But yeah, I feel exactly. So I'm just thinking like it was that there's a lot of clues here that if you had this this understanding of physics and astronomy, that maybe you could look at these things and you could say, oh, so this is what's being described. And I was just wondering, has this information or these narratives that have been put forth about this apocalyptic period or this Revelations similar period, has it ever been put in front of people who can look at that and say, oh, well, this is what it's saying is going on exactly in terms of the upset of the norm, so to speak, from the Earth's perspective.
Well, I have to say that the idea, this cluster of ideas around eschatology is a gigantic topic within Islam, and it has been for centuries and centuries. And all their best scientists were poring over the Quran looking for clues as to what would signal this day of judgment. So I have to say I'm not apprised of that information, so I can't really answer you, but I suspect that this is something that has occurred to many, many intelligent people in Islam. And they may have found out something that we will have to learn from them in the future. But I don't know much about this at all, to tell you the truth. I'm so far out of my depth, I can't even tell you.
Well, it's your turn.
Mark, Mark, before you shut us down, I'd like to make an important point about this that you didn't mention.
Mm-hmm.
And that is that we forget that Mullah Hussein and Tahiri, not all the letters of the living were Shaykhis, but don't forget they followed Shaykh Ahmad and Sid Kazim.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the letters of the living were Shaykhis, definitely. That's what prepared them to accept the Bab.
Yep.
And that was the school that they followed before they became Babis. And Tahiri she read the writings and she adopted some of the theological principles. And Mullah Hussein, they attended the classes of Sayyid Kazim.
Yep.
So they were Shaykhis because they accepted that particular interpretation of Islam.
And it's interesting, Rob sent me an hour and a half long video of Nadir Saidi talking about the Bab and his dreams. I haven't gotten all the way through it yet, but one of the points he makes is that the Bab referred to Sayyid Kazim Rashdi as his teacher because he had actually attended several of his classes when he was living in the Atabat. So there, I mean, it's a fascinating period of time that we don't really know very much about at this point, but we will.
One of the things that Tahiri liked was the concept of cycles and the renewal of cycles. And I believe that was taught by Sheikh Ahmad and Sid Kazim.
Okay, folks. Well, I hope
Mark, before we shut down, Leslie put a question in the chat quite a while ago, but I haven't been able to interject.
Okay.
And the question is, the concept of the spirit staying with the body, does this bear on Muslim or Baha'i ideas about burial traditions?
Well, I would say it doesn't have anything to do with the Baha'i view, but as Jack was saying earlier, but I have to say I don't know enough about this topic in Islam to know to what degree Sheikh Ahmad was being an innovator here or whether he was just following along with a tradition that had existed a long time.
Did you want to elaborate, Leslie?
No, that was it.
Okay, sorry to be so inconclusive on these specifics, but
well, can I just have a word? One little word. And in The Secret of the Golden Flower. It's a Chinese text, 18th century, and it's a late work of Zen Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
And in that book, the whole thing was that when you die, the physical body goes down into the earth, and the spirit or the psyche goes up. It separates from the body, and it goes up rather than down, and so that there's this separation, and that the what goes up actually continues on, but the body doesn't. It's just that one thing I wanted to mention.
Okay. And I see that Rob has another question or comment.
Well, it just comes to the issue of where the spirit stays with the body. Well, then you have a whole conception of time. Well, I mean, what if there is no time? So that that could come to pass, but it might not have duration, or it might. But if time isn't relevant in the spiritual world, something like that occurs, and we're thinking about it's a condition that's staying, and I think that that's related to our attachment to the concept of time, which may not be relevant. I don't know.
Well, it is relevant tonight because it's 9:15, and I think a lot of people are ready to go. So let's wrap this up.
Too bad, because
Thank
I had
you
an answer
very
for
much.
Leslie's question.
Thank
Good
you
night,
much.
everybody.
Take care of
I'll talk to
yourselves,
Leslie
everybody.
later about it. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good
Thanks,
night.
Mark.